Let's talk herd. I did want to ask you, do you ever find that past lives come up in your sessions? And if so, do you find that horses tend to be horses and have been horses, or can they be other animals in your experience? And what kind of, if they do come up, what kind of things come through to you? What kind of influence do they have?
Past lives certainly do come up, not in my everyday communications that I tend to do, at least not very often, because those tend to be very people phoning up, looking for answers to problems that they're experiencing, looking to try and make lives easier for their horses or get to the bottom, and solve problems. So not so much in my everyday communications that I normally do. They certainly do in the card readings that I do. Past lives come up then, very much so with horses, so that I actually do them connected so that the reading is for the person and the horse. So it's about their life journey together. What's their purpose of coming together? What is it that they're most likely to look towards achieving in this lifetime? So past lives tend to come up in those. But I do find that some of my clients tend to have more of a naturally spiritual approach anyway, in the way that they live with their horses, in the way that they interact and share their lives with them. And so with those people, I tend to find that their horses tend to talk about it more. And I think it's because they know that that person will understand, that they will be more accepting of that information. It's almost like if we had a husband that didn't believe in those things, would we take the time to talk to them about it, knowing we would get knocked back over something that was so important? And horses, in their wisdom, a horse that understood about their past lives and remembered those kind of things, would also know not to waste the time on people that aren't going to listen as well. You've got to have a willing recipient to that, to that information. But I think again, that comes back to when our energy is open, when that horse's energy is open, then of course, very much so that is when more so that those information will come through. But I think also as people then, the more that we better understand our horses, we start to question as well, why are we drawn to this horse? Why have we got such an emotional and heartfelt and gut feeling as well, connection to this particular horse? And so that can also kind of send us down that rabbit hole and start us looking into past lives and horses coming as teachers, so that we understand why we are with this particular horse and what we can learn, what do we need to experience together. And certainly something that has come up quite a lot is not just the past lives, but also the shamanism, and horses working in spirit animal form, coming as guides and working with shamanism, and even introducing people to it. I started working with shamanism over 20 years ago and was actually introduced to it by a horse. I didn't understand what was going on. I'd never even heard of it at the time. But the journeys, just every time I closed my eyes, these journeys just started, and they went on for about 10 days. They didn't stop. And it wasn't until I read a book called The Holotropic Mind that I had started having an understanding of what actually was going on. But yeah, it came about because of a horse, and I've met lots of other horses and animals that I know in human form that have accompanied me on those shamanic journeys as well.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm really interested in the shamanism as well. I have a good friend who got into that, and she lives in California now, at the top of a very high mountain. And yeah, she connects with the tree energies, but it's very powerful. And some of those rituals that you can do as well, everything's so metaphorical, I find, It doesn't really matter what form we're in. Everything is signaling something, So whether you're a tree or a horse, or it all means something. It's almost like I was going to say story, but it's not so much. Maybe story is not exactly the right word. More of a formula or a way for understanding. It's the deeper metaphysical patterns that really matter, I think, and everything is just leading us back towards that. So what would you say is can you remember a really interesting past life experience or vision that came to you? Do you tend to pick up visions?
I have, everything tends to come as words, pictures and feelings. So it tends to be a mixture. Mostly it's words, but also feelings and images come. And sometimes it's a bit like a snapshot in time, or it's a bit like a short video playing. But it tends to be, because it's a mental image, it tends to be sort of a bit blurry. So you kind of feel it's hard to explain, but you kind of feel the image as much as you see it. So it might be that if I was working with a dog, it may be that it showed me an animal, for instance, that it lived with, but I would may see a smallish black animal, but not be able to make out what it is, but it would have the feeling of it being a cat or a dog, if that makes sense. So from that point of view, but past lives are really, really interesting ones. Quite a few, and that I've come across with animals of my own. I can remember one of my horses coming to me in a vision, showing me when we were together many years ago, and they were in human French police dress, but it was sort of from many years ago when they used to have those tall hats. We've had that also as knights, as well as with horses that have shown me themselves as human knights. Also, as well, when I've talked with clients, animals as well, there'll be animals that may have been on merchant ships and may have been the ship's cat that provided comfort to that sailor in that lifetime. So it's huge, and I remember my first mare saying to me quite randomly one day, do you remember when you were Gerard and I was Maria, and used to whip me round my hindquarters and say, get up there, you bugger? And I couldn't remember. I know that was years ago. That was over 20 years ago now. And I still remember having that conversation with her, because I can't remember that past life, but she obviously could and wanted to remind me of it. Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. So has that really changed over time? Has that changed your relationship with horses? Because you don't in any way see them as lesser evolved, species or an animal in some way that's different from a person. Do you feel it's altered your relationship, or did you always feel that way about horses?
I didn't get into horses until I was, how old was I? I must have been, I don't know, about 20 years old, maybe a little bit older. I can't remember now. But that was because my daughter was having riding lessons with a friend of mine, and we ended up with a horse, and it kind of went from there. So it was never really my intention to get into horses. It just kind of happened, as these things do. And And to say that it changed my relationship with them, I don't know that it necessarily changed my relationship so much as my relationship began in that way. Right from the beginning. I know when my first mare arrived, I was handed a bridle. I'd never put a bridle on a horse before. And it had a flash noseband. I didn't know it was called a flash noseband. And I pointed to it and I said, "What's that for?" And they said, "Oh, it's to put round her mouth to keep her mouth shut." So I pulled it off and I put it in the bin.
Yeah.
I then had a saddler come out to get a new saddle. And she said, "What's she got shoes on for?" Because she's got good feet. And I said, "Well, horses always wear shoes." And she said, "That horse doesn't need shoes." So I looked into barefoot. Within 3 months, I thought I'd designed a bitless bridle. Turned out they'd been that particular type. The side pull, it was already out and somebody else had invented it, and they've been around for years. But I had this idea, I don't want a bit in my horse's mouth. I'm going to do it, she keeps opening her mouth, and, she's so well behaved, she's great. So I had a saddler person make one for me, and we put that on. So everything was about why. So, with the flash noseband, it was, why does my horse open her mouth? Then there's a problem there. As it turned out, the bit that she'd come with was far too fat for her mouth. It had a nutcracker action. So that went as well. And so I think that was the thing with me, I think too many people nowadays look to, how can I change the behaviour? I need them to do this. How can I make them do it? Not nearly enough people stop and say, why are they doing that? Why are they struggling? What are they actually trying to tell me? And what can I, as a person, do better for them to make them feel more comfortable? And so that really is about how I went in to horses in the first place. So I'm not sure that my understanding or my attitude to them necessarily ever changed. I just think that over time I learnt more, and because I learnt more, I realised how much I didn't know, and the more I wanted to learn. And so over 20 years later, I'm still on that journey of still discovering, like all of us. And the day that I don't learn something new is, I've run into a problem.
Yeah.
Because, and grown stagnant. It's about every day I need to learn something new, and every day they offer us new opportunity and new learning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so much about being open, isn't it? And just, it is a real gift in a way, that to be able to avoid that whole conditioning process that people often go through with horses, that they're told how to do things, and you just, I suppose it depends on who you are as well and what you're bringing in. But yeah, I suppose it took me longer to get to that why, because I was being told for so long. You do become sort of indoctrinated, I suppose, and it takes you a long time, or it took me until I was in my 20s, I suppose. But I'd had all of those years of being told how to do things, and just, it's almost like you're told not to question it, because just like in anything else in life, if there's traditions that are put in place for a reason, so that we could exploit the horse and not get into any trouble with them having opinions, then yeah, it takes time to get back the whole. First of all, I think you have to get it back in yourself, the realization that you can make a choice and that you can do what you want. You don't have to ride, you don't have to not ride. You can decide what you want to do with your horse. And then I think there's also a period of allowing the horse to just rediscover choice as well. I think that's quite important, because they can often not realize that they have a choice if they've not been given one before. And so yeah, I think the thing about the horse industry and the horse world and equestrianism is that there's just so many features and facets and so much going on that it's difficult to find a center for people. There's so many influences and there's so many ideas. But a good thing, I think, is that people are coming into it later and later, a little bit like you. And then they've got like awareness of life from other things. And they're not so prone to being, to accepting things just for the sake of it. And that they're able to think more or just feel more. And that influences what they do with their horses. So it brings a lot of fresh air into something that can be quite stagnant. And certainly here in France, that's quite, in the club system, it's quite there's not a lot of new stuff happening really. And then when new things do happen, they tend to, like Pirelli and those kind of natural horsemanship things, they tend to be, it's almost like a fashion. It becomes a fashion or a fad, and it's taken on in such a massive way that it sort of gets rid of things that were valuable in the traditions. And so I think we're still in quite a turbulent time in our whole relationship with horses.
I think so too, and I don't know what you think about it, but what I've noticed in, say, the last 5 years is whilst the understanding of horses, the more natural side, the more barefoot, the looking more into therapies for horses, and the behavioural side coming more to the forefront and more readily acceptable. And what am I trying to say? That, everything that's sort of more natural, more open-minded is coming more to the forefront to do with horses. Like people, it's almost like people are getting to the point where they want to explore more. They want to look more into, they're seeing where the problems are and where things are going wrong and looking how to solve them. But what I've also noticed, as much as you've got more of that going on, so more of the kindness coming and thoughtfulness towards horses coming to the forefront, it seems to be that there is still that high level of disregard, of abuse, and of stagnancy to do with horses and how people are with them. And what I've noticed is that divide has become bigger. It's almost become a for or against, and the shades of grey that are sort of in the middle seem to be lessening a little bit. But there's certainly, unfortunately, that large part in equestrianism that still deems the abuse of horses and the not listening to them as okay, and it's not okay. It's far from okay. And I know in one of the books that I wrote, I referred to it called as the horses as the ghost in the machine, because so many people think of horses as a machine. We drive horses, we put fuel in the tank, we drive them, they become that machine. Like a car, when you change gear, you offer the horse the cue, you expect that response from the horse. If you don't get that response, that the horse is punished for it, or the cues come harder and faster. And what I describe as the ghost in the machine is exactly what we've been looking for, what we've been discussing here. It's going in and looking into the inner being of the horse. It's that connection with the horse. It's looking for that we can't see, that can only be felt. And that's what we need to go looking for, so that we stop just using our eyes, continue to use our hearts, but we start focusing on our gut. That we start focusing on that gut knowing, that gut feeling, and run with it. Because if it doesn't feel right in the gut, then we start needing to question what it is that we are actually doing to horses, and what it is that we're actually asking of them if it doesn't feel right to us.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more about the rift. And it really is. I think we can simplify it just the way that you have. Because if there's really only two places that we can be, and that's outside and inside. And it's true that when you look, like sometimes I'll look on Facebook or some kind of social media and I'll go outside a little bit of what I would say my little oasis of the friends and the things that feel good to me. And I'll just kind of have a look at what's happening outside in the world. And I'm pretty shocked by, it's like it hasn't changed. And it's just as you say, there's like this crazy like hardness and rigidity and inability to see all of these things. And it could be depressing, and you could think, wow, it's not happening. But I think if you, like you say, we only have to make that one shift, and all of these people are capable, just as capable of that. Just instead of thinking about what's going on outside and the results and the competition and the doing and the riding and all of those things, and just make that flip so that it's about how we feel. And everyone can do that, and anyone can do that at any moment. And I think that we who have been blessed enough for whatever reason to come here and to be in this life experience and to know those things, that's, in a way, it's like a responsibility that we have, just not to try and persuade other people to do it, but just to do it ourselves. And I think when we do that, we're creating a coherence that just will spread, and it will spread out into the whole of the horse community. And I think I read somewhere that coherence has to be 1%. I think if you have 1% of people who are in an alignment with source and with their center and they created that balance, then that affects the whole 100%. So it's not a lot that's needed, really. We just need to do what we're doing, really, and keep focused on that and not worrying about how things are evolving outside.
Without a doubt, and I think certainly we can see that is already happening. We just need it to happen faster. We need more people to wake up to understanding what horses are, how it can be. And for their own sakes as much as anything, not only so that they can bring out the best that their horses have to offer, but they can have what I would consider to be a proper relationship rather than just two work colleagues, because quite often that's what I see quite often with people and their horses. They're work colleagues. The friendship isn't there. It's a working partnership. When you bring that other side in, when you bring that friendship in, when you have the laughs, when you have the play, that's when horses will then bring out that creativity for you, and that you can choose to interact with. And once they see that you're choosing to engage, it just starts expanding things in the relationship.
So what is the one thing you would say that people could do to find that within themselves, to find their ability to feel?
Stop, breathe, go and sit with your horse and take your watch off. Simple as that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
It literally is that simple, but so few people do it. But it's that simple. But I think when we look out at how modern life is, a lot of people don't even do that with their children.
Yeah. And I think often,
and time, for a lot of us is very short.
Yeah. And then when you have to be able to do that without expectations and without seeing a result from it. Just, do it as often as you can and just allow that it is helping and changing and you're becoming someone new, and you don't have to see the results instantly.
Well, no, and certainly it might be the case that it takes a while to get results, because you imagine if you've not been listening to your horse for years, well, months, years, whatever, um, why all of a sudden, when you hear that, when you start listening and taking note of your horse once, how is it ever going to know if you're going to keep doing it, if it feels safe enough to even open up to you and to be its true self, until you can prove your consistency, And so within that, I think there has to be a bit of responsibility from ourselves, of understanding that whether it be us personally or another of our species, another person, that we have caused that, and by consequence that the onus and responsibility is therefore on us in order to prove our worth to them. Why have horses got to prove their worth and work their socks off for us? It's about, we need to prove ourselves worthy of this magnificent prey animal, that could choose to kill us, but instead is doing its uttermost to try and live in our world, largely unlistened to, and to serve our needs and our purpose. The only difference is that we're not understanding how they're trying to serve our needs if we're not listening.
Yeah, we often don't realize how generous and how tolerant they're being for us.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think as well, we have to avoid maybe being guilty about it and feeling bad about what we've done in the past and what we might not do the same. We have to, and say, okay, we're doing our best. Because I think that then makes you feel better. And then that, makes everything better, because the horses don't want us to blame ourselves. I think they just want to connect, really.
Definitely, and I think that's incredibly important what you've just described there. One of the things that I say to clients when they feel awful about how they've not listened to their horse before and things like that, I always say the same thing to people. So long as you did the best you could at the time with the knowledge you had, could you have done any more? And 9 times out of 10, that answer would be no, I couldn't have done any more. And I say to people, then you've done nothing wrong.
Exactly.
You can only do what you know how to do. And the only reason that you have now to feel guilty is now that you are in the knowledge of that, if you don't listen to it and you go back to doing what you used to do.
Exactly.
That's the only time you need to feel guilty.
Yeah, because that we couldn't get to where we are now if we hadn't gone through what we've gone through. It's like a process of becoming, really.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, it's been really amazing to talk to you, Holly. Do you have anything else you can think of you would want to say?
Yeah, other than listen to your horse. Every action, every movement, every action, everything that they do is all information for us. And we need to start listening to them. And we need to start interacting with them in the way that they actually need us to interact with them, and stripping away all that ridiculous superficialness that so many of us work with our horses, and actually get to the nitty gritty of things, and stop wasting time. All of this time is wasted. The little cat that was meowing earlier, she's 19 years old this month. It's only been this last year that she's not been a little scaredy puss. Where she's not hidden when visitors have come in, and now she's the bravest little thing. So that's 18 years of her life that she wasted feeling worried. Feeling worried when she didn't need to be. And if we sort of put that into our relationship with horses, don't waste any more time. Don't sort of turn around sort of 6 months before the end of life and go, oh, I realised what my horse was trying to get across to me now. Go out and listen to them now. Go out and listen to what it is that they're saying. Spend that time with them. Allow yourself to breathe out. Listen. be with them and stop messing about, really. It's literally stop messing about and go and enjoy yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just inspiring people. Is I find that inspiring that people can, that they can see people who are doing that and who are experiencing this different level of a connection, and that will inspire them, that they've got the support there, that there are people who care, and that it doesn't matter if they're the only one on the yard who does it. Because I think that can be difficult as well, a bit of peer pressure on these yards. And that's what I want Soul Herd to be, a resource base, a platform for people to see that there are people who care, and that, we're everywhere. There's quite a lot of us now, and that it's all happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and I think that is obviously the best way to inspire, is to actively get out there and do it just as you are, so that when people see it, you know what it's like. Even as children, we used to look at things and we used to go, "Oh, I wish I could do that. Wish I could be like that." Well, all the equestrians out there, you're all capable. Somewhere in you, if you dig deep enough, everything that you need to achieve that is all there. People just need to try. And I think fear, as you rightly pointed out, peer pressure, but also fear of failure, can stop the try. It takes that strong person to go, actually, no, I want better for myself and for my horse, and I don't care what people say. When people jokingly talk about the tree huggers and things, so what? There's nothing wrong with hugging a tree any more there is than hugging your horse.
Absolutely. So true.
I think it's just one of those things. It's about, just for those times, is removing yourself out of the equestrian world and moving into the world where you and your horses exist.
Absolutely.
Where, pushing away the outer boundaries, you can sort of come back down, to the norm, the considered norm, as it were, and mix with your equestrian friends, and and fit in and everything. But then don't ever forget about coming back to yourself and coming back to your horse.
Yeah.
That's a private thing between you and your horse that nobody can take away.
Absolutely. And that really applies for your whole life, doesn't it? I think in our society, we're ready to realize now that we can do what we enjoy doing, and that we don't have to go by the rules that have been created, that you have to have a job, and you have to, a job that pays for things, and, that you can do what you love, and that you will be supported in that. And it's the same with your horses. I think it really is possible to make your own rules, and make not even rules, make your own world, just like you say. And you don't have to do anything the way that it's been done. Yeah. That freedom is an amazing feeling.
It is, because I can remember years ago, because I trained as a behaviourist years ago, and the reason that I went to do that was because I found that I didn't have any formal training prior to that with horses, but I found that what I was doing was working. But I wanted to know why what I was doing was working, so that I could explain it to other people.
Yeah.
And that was my reasoning for going and training in behaviour, which I found really, really helped with the communication work as well, from the point of view of that extra understanding of behaviour meant that I could, how do I explain it, sort of put together questions that I normally wouldn't have thought to ask, just based on logic that then may have gone on to provide information. But also it enabled me to explain from a proper point of view. When people are saying to me, my horse can't stand still, I was able to explain in a science-based term why their horse can't stand still. And it's actually not your horse's fault that it can't stand still, because its body is literally telling it to move through its physiology. So from that point of view, education also is important. So although we go in with this newfound freedom, we also, there has to be discipline on our part, not just from a spiritual and a spiritual point of view and an energetic point of view, but we also, I feel, have to have a level of disciplined education, of the right kind of education as well, because that also enables us to move further as well, and enables us to, when we get approached by those skeptics, and people challenging us for daring to go into work with our horses a different way. It gives us a way of being able to explain why, and from a science-based point of view, why what we're doing works. But also as well, it's that education is important from the point of view, if we want to have this beautiful spiritual natural lifestyle with our horses, if we want to look after our best friends, then we need to understand about nutrition. We need to understand about their needs as an equine. So from that point of view, education is also important as well.
Yeah, I really agree with that.
You know, we can't just, loving a horse isn't enough. We've got to be able to look after it in the way that it needs to be looked after as well.
Yeah. And I really believe that the more open to the truth you are, the more that you want to learn, and you want to, maybe not the truth, but your truth, and how you can best serve the horse in your life, or the horses, the more will come to you. Just like you were saying about your understanding of not using a bit, not using a flash, and also the best way that they can live together, and, a high fiber diet, all of those things, all of that knowledge comes to you just when you're ready to hear it.
That's it. And what you were saying earlier about, with animal communication, about understanding bias and things, that what you've just said is perfect example there, was because even though I'm pro bitless, and my horses were bitless, also I don't bias against horses that tell me that they need their bit. And when I say need, I'm generally talking from a psychological point of view, that when that has been the only thing that horses know and that makes them feel safe and it's comfortable to them, it's a little bit like just taking it abruptly away from them may well not work for them and may flag up insecurities. It's a little bit like somebody there stripping us down to our underwear and pushing us out of the back door and still expecting us to be able to go to work the same, after removing what we're used to having, making us feel okay. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
So this is why it's so important to be open, the same as some horses will be more comfortable being stabled, although their bodies aren't designed for it. A lot will argue their minds aren't, but some have become so institutionalized, like some ex-racers, for instance, that going out and living in a field is scary for them. It makes them feel vulnerable. So once you start understanding that, you can't really have biases within animal communication and be properly informed, or properly do your job and do justice for the animals that you're actually working for, because it's about how they feel and about their personal experiences.
Yeah, it's so true. And just finding the next step that will help with everything. You don't have to make massive changes all at once. It's incremental, and it's really guided by love and guided by them, and what feels good for them.
Definitely. That's it. It's literally walk into the field and say to your horse, what would you like us to do today? Let your horse show you.
Yeah. And it's such fun as well to do it like that.
The spontaneous experiences that I've had with horses have always been the best. And that just opens up doorways. That just opens up new ideas as to try next. You know, they plant the seed, they put the idea, we build upon it together.
And I think maybe that's something that sometimes happens, that we worry that they won't plant a seed, you know, that they don't have ideas. And so you've got to let that go, I think, as part of your growth as a horse guardian.
But certainly, as with partnership, we plant those seeds for those horses that find it hard to plant their own. You know, it's a partnership. It works both ways. So from that point of view, certainly, you know, it's a little bit like in the conversation that we're having now. One's offering something, the other thinks about it, comes back with a response, and that's how the conversation is built, isn't it? And the same with our horses. It's literally the bouncing off of each other.
Absolutely. It's the dialogue, yeah. And that's what becomes so fascinating. I think that's what creates the relationship, is being able to have that dialogue. And the more that you develop your ability to hear, the more you develop your ability to respond and to be able to act on what you hear. And the same for the horse, I think.
Definitely. It's the root of the relationship, isn't it? The dialogue, the listening and the appropriate responses.